is going to address you on issues of their concern for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then about half an hour into this we will turn it over to audience questions, and that's the most interesting part, of course. So what I would like to ask, though, is that people ask questions. They don't do a long statement with an inflection at the end. I know it's tempting to give a speech, but what we want are questions so that we can continue to push the conversation forward. So if you can ask the question, then people can answer it, then the next person can come up and do the same thing. We'll have people stand out here to ask the question. We're going to keep the mic just for the panelists. So that's part one, and I will introduce everybody in a second. So this is actually a monthly series for us. So every fourth Wednesday, we've been, since April, having these discussions. But we actually have a special two-part series. This is part one. The second part is coming up next month, and that is the student housing crisis, which is a big issue in Davis. We got the date wrong on the original announcement, so make sure everybody knows it's September 27th, which is a Wednesday, not a Tuesday, which is a council meeting, but Wednesday, the 27th, here, 6 to 8, and we always start the actual program about 6:30, so we give people a chance to kind of show up and get settled, because everybody seems to like to arrive late anyway, so we go 6:30 to about 7:30, and we can go as long as 8 before Kevin from Sophia's starts nudging me out the door, which he did 2 months ago, which was funny, but people kept wanting to talk and ask questions. So that event will have a great panel. We'll have Lucas Frericks, who's of course on the City Council, Jason Tormino, who's the president of the Davis Chamber. We have Greg Rowe, who is an expert on CEQA. And we have somebody coming from UC Davis. They haven't designated the person, but I've been in touch with the university. And then the student body president from UC Davis, Josh Davala. It's not written in front of me, and it's not a name that is immediately familiar, but Josh will be the fifth panelist. So that, again, next month, 6 to 8 p.m. So also let everybody know the Vangaurd is having its big fundraiser on November the 4th, and we have gotten already 49 sponsors. Our goal is to get to 50 by tomorrow, which is the end of our early sponsorship period. So sponsorships start at $100 and go up from there, and you get recognition, and you can get advertising and all sorts of other stuff. So there are forms at the front table if you're interested in sponsoring the event. Again, it starts at $100, and it helps fund our operations. So we're a nonprofit, and what I've learned over the years is nonprofit means you're always needing money in order to pay the bills, because for some reason everybody wants to get paid, including my employees and our renters and all that. So if you can help out in any way, please do. All right, so let's see, is there anything else I need to say? The Vangaurd, davisvangaurd.org. We publish news and commentary every day of the week. We have good, robust discussions on there. So it's always good to get new people involved. Sometimes it gets a little heated. We've been trying to tame it a little bit, but you know, it's Davis, what can I say? All right, let me introduce the panel. So we have Mayor Pro Tem Brett Lee here, and there you are. So for the second month in a row, we have Michael Bish, who is standing in for somebody. This time he is standing in for Josh Chapman from the Davis downtown. We have Dobie Fleeman from Davis Ace, and we have Rhonda Reed from the Old East Davis Neighborhood Association. So just by way of introduction, what the topic is tonight, just to let people know, the topic is not going to be trackside, which is a proposed housing development. So we don't want to turn this into a debate on that. However, it is important to understand how the core area specific plan and design guidelines impacts what is going to be going on here in the downtown, and also the areas immediately around the downtown. So that's why we've asked Rhonda to be involved. The other big issue that the city is dealing with and debating over how to handle it is the issue of parking in the downtown. Apparently people can't find parking sometimes, I don't know. So some people want to charge for parking, other people don't want to charge for parking. So that's a big area of discussion. And then probably the biggest issue is the update of the core area specific plan, which will kind of guide how first the downtown and then how Davis really develops in the next portion of the planning period, whether that's 10 years or sometimes longer. And that is a discussion that is kind of ongoing. Last night, the City Council approved the structure of a core area specific plan committee what did we decide? 15 people, 15 voting members, and 19 overall members will be part of that discussion, and they're going to meet monthly over the next 15 to 18 months. So this is an ongoing issue, and we're kind of really at the start of that issue, but it's critical because if you walk around the downtown, we still have large pockets of downtown that are single story. We have commercial areas that are vacant, and of course the ongoing issue of parking. So I have no idea who wants to go first. So you guys can fight or not fight, or I can just go and order the list. You want to go first, Brett? All right, there we go. Brett Lee, folks.
Well, thank you, David and the Vangaurd, for hosting this event. I think probably more discussion is better than less discussion on a lot of these issues. As you can tell, I don't have any set prepared remarks, but this is a topic, both topics have come up a lot, and I feel that I'm fairly knowledgeable on them. I'll start things off by saying that, when we... Actually, I'll back up a little bit. So, imagine all the things that you would like to see our downtown become over the next 5 or 10 years. We have sort of the pebbles in our shoe, the things that bother us, but then there's sort of more forward-thinking ideas. So just think about things. So amazingly, those are the things that I really want the downtown to become as well. So anyway, thank you. No, so the downtown is unique in Davis, for Davis Heights, because it is a place that Davis has had to work fairly hard to keep as a unique downtown, as opposed to many of the towns up and down the Interstate 80 corridor who have sort of allowed their downtowns not to flourish, but to sort of fend for themselves and die out to some extent. So we see examples of kind of big docks in the perimeter of the town, and Davis has had to take a pretty active role to prevent that. As a result, we have a very attractive downtown that we want to maintain and actually improve. If we were to look at Todd is focused on bicycling and transportation aspects. We have some people in the crowd are more focused on how can they build additional buildings to increase that vibrancy and to allow more people to live and work and shop downtown. right? So there's a variety of mixed sort of, so when it was a little bit of a joke when I said, imagine what you wanted. But I think the thing is, we all have different thoughts, and we also know about Davis downtown. If I were to say, hey, tell me about Pioneer Park, what do you envision for Pioneer Park? There are some of your neighbors who might have some specific ideas, but many in the audience, it looks like, I don't know, that's some park somewhere else-ish. Right? So just like we all have thoughts on Central Park and the Farmers Market. So just as a way of introduction, we're going to hear a variety of comments on this, and I'm really looking forward to the questions. But the downtown belongs to everybody, and it's not. And we received interesting emails when we talked about the core area specific plan update. We had an email or two which basically said the only people that should be on this task force are property owners in the downtown. And it reminded me of like. 1776, where you only get a vote if you're sort of a white property owner, because obviously you don't have any skin in the game if you are not a property owner. And I thought that was sort of interesting. I understood the perspective. What I did not receive an email advocating for, but I've heard it in other areas, which is sort of term of residence in Davis, right? The new person coming in has less of a say than somebody who's been here for 30 years or 50 years, right? Because a lot of times, oftentimes when people come and address the city council, they say, I moved here in, and they don't say, I moved here in 2015, and they say, I moved here in 1970 whatever when I was a student at, and it kind of goes on because length of tenure is important. But the point is not to discourage people from providing input. I think new resident comes in, brings in fresh eyes and sort of fresh observations, right? So tonight, UC Davis is not in session, and for the medium to longer term residents, we can almost kind of tell kind of the seasons by when suddenly we go out to the main thoroughfare, whether that's Russell Boulevard or Tubble or something like that. You look and you're like, wow, where did all the cars go? Oh, that's right, it's summer.
They're not here.
But even today, parking is difficult, right? And it's been getting worse. And so this is an area that we do need to address. And I would like to get into that in a little bit. In terms of the format, I think used up enough time just from the introduction piece, but I would like to talk about paid parking. For those of you who follow this issue, you know that I am a big advocate for paid parking. And it's not because I think paid parking is wonderful, but because we have sort of two choices at this point. We have not very good and maybe a little less good. And so it's not that paid parking is an ideal solution, but why don't I open it up to my colleagues here and have them do their introductions.
Good evening, my name is Michael Bish, and I'm representing the Davis Downtown Business Association this evening. And I'm a pinch hitter or a utility infielder or something like that. This is my second time coming in as a backup for somebody. So let me ask a question. Who's here because they're super excited about parking? Raise your hands. 5 or 6, and then Brett. Who's here because they're super excited about a vision for downtown? In other words, the core area specific plan update. Okay, so a lot of people. We're mostly here to talk about the core area specific plan. That's the way I view it too. For me, parking is just a tool to achieve whatever vision the community has for the downtown. Who here is a downtown business owner? Raise your hand. There's 5 or 6 of us.
Did I miss somebody?
Who here is a downtown, a core area resident? Raise your hand, please. So shortly retired. Who here just enjoys the downtown because it's a social gathering place in the community? Okay, some of you need to leave because you did not raise your hands. That's ridiculous. Why are you even here? That makes no sense. Okay, how about city officials? Buy you beer? You're here because of a beer? Okay, Jim.
Thai food and beer.
Okay, Thai food and beer. Shout out for Kevin. Who here is a city official? We're not going to hang you afterwards, guys. It's safe to raise your hands. One. Come on, there's more of you.
We're staff, we're not officials, we're staff.
Okay, who here is a city official or staff? There you go. All right, so we have a pretty diverse group, except heavily tilted towards downtown advocates. And I really look forward to the questions. Thanks.
He's a musician, so he will practice doing this. Well, good evening. I'm Rhonda Reed. I'm the president of the Old East Davis Neighborhood Association. A little closer. Okay. Now, can you hear me? I actually do better when I'm holding it, because then it keeps me from gesticulating and knocking over glasses, but I want to be close by, so that's good. So part of the, I think I saw some of my neighbors kind of question when Michael asked how many of you are core area residents. Because the definition of core area can be either very specific and technical, or it can be kind of more of a gestalt. So as a resident of Old East Davis, which actually is within the core area planning zone, I could say if you're going to use core area lowercase, then I would say yes, I'm a core area resident. If you're going to say you're a core area or downtown core resident, I would say no. Why is that? And this is, so I've been a property owner in Old East Davis since 1980. I've been a resident most recently since 2002. And we bought our house knowing that it was a designated historic landmark. What does that mean? And it means that we needed to go through rules, and that we limited things that we could do to the house. If we wanted to modernize it, there were limits. While we were not living in a house, Davis did its general plan in 2000, and in that process, they identified for the core area, and the planning area for the core is from A to L and 1st to 8th. And they recognized that there's a difference between the actual downtown core and the neighborhoods that surround the core. And in that process, they identified that in order to keep kind of the character and feel of what we value in the downtown core area writ large, that there were kind of 4 distinct neighborhoods. There was a downtown core, which is kind of where most of the commerce and the business occurs. And then there's University Rice Lane, which is basically from B Street that way. There is Old North, which is north of 5th Street generally. And then there's Old East, which is east of the railroad tracks to L Street. In each of these areas, that general plan, in my opinion, actually was much more visionary than we think that people were in those days, because they really talked about the sorts of overlays and the plans that help to maintain and allow progress to occur in these traditional neighborhoods, such as densification, infill, and so forth, but not losing the soul, not losing the character of those neighborhoods. So when we talk, and actually they have these design guidelines, it's overlays, which they aren't just in pirate speak guidelines, but they really are captured in the city ordinances as having the weight of law and having the strength. Where if there's a conflict with the zoning and other things, other standards, whichever is most restrictive shall prevail. So sometimes it's the design guideline that is more restrictive, and sometimes it might be the zoning that's more restrictive. So there was a lot of visioning done in that time. The Davis Futures Forum has been very helpful in hosting several community forums on things like form-based zoning and how should we plan for our city to grow. We've participated in those with great interest, and we're looking forward to participating in the revision and the update of the core area plan, the amendment to the general plan. I want to thank the City Council last night for passing passing a resolution commitment, whatever the case may be, to have a representative on the core area advisory committee. I'm not going to say what that acronym says. But in that, to have a representative of the 19 members, one of those representatives will be representing the University Rice Lake neighborhood, one will represent Old North, and one will represent Old East. Because those folks actually represent 3/4 of the planning area and have, as Rochelle Swanson mentioned, skin in the game. So I appreciate that. But there'll also be other voices that will reaching out to the community to participate and add their opinions. You know, two things that I think are really important to see in terms of this revision of the general plan is, one, we have a lot of rules. We've changed them over time since 2000, kind of inching piecemeally here and there. Sometimes it's complicated to figure out what the rules really are. So I think having a view about what those, how you can actually make them more readable for the average person as well as developers is a good objective. And the other question that I have is, how is it we've had these incentives and guidelines and so forth to try to encourage densification in the downtown core? We've done a lot of densification on East Davis, accessory dwelling units, new development, and yet in the downtown core, it doesn't seem to have that same sort of change. So how do we encourage that to happen from local downtown property owners?
Good evening. I apologize, but I tend to wander with my comments, so I'm going to try and deliver some prepared comments here initially. So put up with me between my poor eyesight. At the outset, let me just say that I would prefer to be talking about the importance of growing the base of local jobs and local employers, and the critical importance of these two elements to the success and sustainability of any downtown community level strategy. As a business, Davis Lumber and Hardware is celebrating 100 years and growing strong. Still devoted to amazing every customer every time. It's not always easy, maybe not even possible, but that's the goal, and we have a team that's dedicated to that task. We're proud to be downtown, we're proud to be locally owned, and grateful for the many years of support by our neighbors and the local Davis community. On the subject of parking, as you know, we are embarked on a new project to provide short-term customer parking for the hardware store. This project is undertaken in direct response to customer complaints about parking availability near the store. Our need to be competitive and convenient with other surrounding destinations, and our primary goal of delivering positive reinforcement when our neighbors choose to shop downtown, while at the same time positioning ourselves for in-store pickups via the internet, home and job site deliveries. We honor our customers' time and their desire for certainty about finding available parking when they choose to come downtown. To be frank, investment in a new parking lot after 50 successful years of sharing a public city lot was not on our 2017 wish list. But we compete in a rapidly changing marketplace. Our customers are our first priority, and after 3 years of missed deadlines on the implementation of Phase 1 of the Downtown Parking Management Plan, followed by the latest plan to impose 4-hour paid parking on public lots, inaction was no longer an option. While we honor all of our customers, those arriving on foot, by bike, in wheelchairs, automobiles, trucks, and cabs, we have an admittedly contrarian view regarding the virtues and effectiveness of paid parking in downtown Davis. Our view may be terribly simplistic, but when all of our competitors offer reliable, free parking to their customers, when our neighboring small towns and other prosperous downtowns like Palo Alto, Carmel, La Jolla, Petaluma, Napa, and Sonoma that have all worked so hard to retain free parking in their downtowns, we have a difficult time ignoring their collective wisdom. We are not San Francisco or Capitol Mall, Sacramento, two favorite examples of city staff, where there are large populations of well-paid administrative and working professionals and where expense parking cards are often the norm. I would suggest that our mayor is being too hard on himself and accepting blame for the failure of the launch of the Downtown Parking Task Force Phase 1 recommendations. Seriously. The issue, both politically and institutionally, underlying this failure must be traced back at least 15 years to the beginning of what I call the Great Conversion, which has led to downtown Davis as a highly popular destination food court entertainment center in the midst of our downtown. Bottom line, you set a plan to convert geographically constrained area into a dining and entertainment district without planning any new infrastructure to accommodate the additional traffic, and what you see is exactly what you get. Food courts are incredibly automobile-centric. Examples abound. The world-renowned Farmers Market on Melrose in Fairfax, Los Angeles, Concourse B at Sacramento Metro, UC Davis Dining Commons, Santa Cruz Boardwalk, the restaurants at Westfield Galleria in Roseville. The point being that food courts rely directly or indirectly on abundant adjacent parking to accommodate employees and customers alike. You don't plan development of such destinations without planning to support the parking requirements. You don't not talk about the conflict for 15 years, and yet that is precisely what has transpired here in Davis. I'm almost done. On the core area specific plan, we are grateful that interest continues to focus on retaining downtown Davis as a central commercial and cultural core of the community. As business merchants, property owners, and landlords and neighbors, we are both encouraged but also concerned about efforts to revitalize and densify the core area. We are encouraged with recent investments like Broman Development, expansion plans for new hotel properties, and plans for the new trackside project. Where the concern arises, the issues are exactly parallel to the concerns raised in connection with the processes, outcomes, frustrations, and failures which have characterized the downtown parking management plan implementation. And it's not like Davis' visioning process hasn't been undertaken numerous times before. Look no further than Chapter 9, Growing Pains, 30 Years in the History of Davis by Mike Fitch, free on the City of Davis website, written on the occasion of our 75th city anniversary. What have we learned from that history? In short, we have continuing concerns about the larger vision for Davis community within the context of the region and how a redirected downtown can be effectively leveraged to help achieve that vision. It is one thing to have a grand new plan, but it must also make sense to our downtown neighbors, the larger Davis community, and just as important, it must make sense to the larger investment community. Everyone in the community is interested in and has a stake in better understanding where the downtown is headed and why. We are very hopeful the core area update will provide the opportunity and serve as a launching pad to explore the future trajectory of the community. Thank you.
Okay, give me 1 second. All right. I'm going to let Brett talk, and then we'll start taking questions. I do want to real quickly thank a few people while everybody's still here and listening, as opposed to at the end when everybody's leaving. The Vangaurd has some board members here in the audience. Anya McCann is still staffing the front booth, so thank you, Anya. Alan Hirsch right here, and then Tia Will over here. I'd also like to thank my wife in absentia because she had to go take our 2 youngest kids to their back to school night tonight over at Montgomery. She's on her way at some point here, but she had other duties to attend to. And finally, thank Vivian Suiha for one of our interns, and then Marissa Barrera, our staffer, who's helping to record this. So thank you. And we are videoing this on Facebook Live, so this is being broadcast live. I haven't been monitoring to see what our audience is like, but last time we had over 1,000 views, so it was pretty good. And then we're also recording it for YouTube as well, so people will be able to watch it. People to kind of step up to this open spot right here. Just step on Alan and that'll be fine.
So based upon the interest in the core area specific plan, I thought I would give a little background. About 4 years ago when I first got on the city council, so Rob Hoffman here, I along with Lucas Ferricks, we were on the core area specific plan. And we met with Rob and him and Boschkin, staff members, to come up with what we had hoped would have been sort of a clearer, more streamlined approach to what our downtown should look like. And initially we sort of thought we would just sort of take care of a few sort of easy items. 3 or so years later, having accomplished essentially nothing, there was sort of the serendipity where local folks, Judy Corbett and a few others, Alan Hirsch and a few others, were involved in bringing some people, giving some presentations, one at the Vets Memorial and then one at the City Hall Chambers, about these different ways communities were planning. And ultimately, through that introduction, city staff and city council agreed to go along with something called form-based code. And form-based code is a little bit different. We can talk about that just sort of after this event in terms of what the details are. But the idea is that we plan for our downtown with the future in mind and in a more simplified way, so there's more certainty both for the residents, the business people here who make use of space, whether that's retail or office or other use, and then also for the property owners, so they have a better sense of what would be allowed and not allowed. And I think when you actually, unusual for Davis, but I would say that when you talk to people, the vast majority are very optimistic about this process. And that was this group that's coming in to help us with the form-based code development will be assisted by the community members that Rhonda was talking about. I would like to add a caution, and it sometimes surprises people. The zoning is the zoning until the city council changes the zoning. And so while sometimes we feel that there is certainty because of the zoning and because of the design guidelines, essentially 3 city council members can change that. So imagine where you live. I'll finish up in a second, but this is a very important piece because a lot of people spend a lot of time working on the general plan. They'll spend a lot of time on this updated form-based code for the core area specific plan. But ultimately, you need council members who will agree to follow what's been worked on. And we have some good examples of that, and we have some not so good examples of that. I think Maynard Skinner is here, and he'll be happy to share his, I thought he was here, some thoughts on what happened with Mission Residences. I think this is a good example of where the neighbors in that area had come up with a fairly recent review and plan for what that neighborhood should look like, and it was not adhered to by the council majority. But anyway, so imagine where you live. This building here, well, let's not use that one. We'll pick a different one. We could make 8 stories. Just the city council could say, well, you know, the zoning says 4. But hey, we like the applicant, it's going to be 8. Right? That's not the way to do planning. That's not the way for the community to benefit in the long run. If ultimately we think that should be 8 stories, we should have a planning process that has a vision, not only for that specific parcel, but for the parcels adjacent to it. And ultimately, we may think we want to get to 8 stories, but one dimension that we often don't explore is the notion of time. So in 2030, this could be 4 stories. In 2050, we will go to 8, right? And so we ultimately want to get to a certain place, but it doesn't have to happen overnight. And I know we're not going to talk about the specifics of trackside, but I will take one sort of cheap shot at trackside. 6 stories, I'm not sure. Well, actually, there were investors who invested in trackside and thought that 6 stories was fine. That they invested their hard-earned money and thought that this was an acceptable proposal. I'm not real comfortable with that gigantic change overnight. If, on the other hand, they said, well, in 2050, we would like trackside to be 6 stories. That's a different thing. And the only reason I mention that is time is a dimension that we haven't made use of. And because we are very reactive to specific developer proposals. But as a community, as we look at this core area specific plan, we're planning for the future. It's not based upon some individual asks by developers with a specific parcel that want to do something. We have the opportunity to make wise, thoughtful decisions that balance the need to keep our unique, nice downtown with the reality is that the world is changing. And I will finish up 30 seconds here. I don't know if any of you remember Green Planet. Green Planet, the smoothie place. Yeah, so it was there and then disappeared. Right? Alphabet Link, right? We, I think as a community, want to be able to be that downtown where shops like that and locations like that can survive and thrive. That it's just not going to be the gaps of the world that are able to stay in the core area. We want people who are individual shopkeepers with a unique sort of offering and a personalized offering. We want to find a way to help them. And part of that has to do with more foot traffic, more people living downtown. And I really look forward to what the experts from Opticos and the people who are going to be assisting us with the core area specific plan have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. A good reminder never to cede the mic to an elected official. I did neglect to thank a very important person, and that is Kevin Wan, the owner here of Sophia's, who has generously donated his facility and his restaurant and patio to our usage. So thank you, Kevin. All right, so people who have questions can kind of step up toward the mic, but not to the mic, and here we go. All right, Alan, you are first.
Someone define what the difference is between economic development and community development.
Okay, the question is the difference between economic development and community development.
I'll give it a shot.
All right.
In my humble estimation, I think that economic development is underpinned by the notion that projects would move forward based upon the success of their economics. That would involve considerations of the investors, of the market, the competition, and whether the project seems viable economically looking forward because your investment today is repaid over a long period of time. Community development is certainly related to economic development, but community development has much to do with the fabric of the community, the perceived values of the community, the opportunities for prosperity in general across the community for residents and citizens. So one is more project specific, I think, and has to do with growth and economics and jobs. And the other is how do we continue to improve the underpinnings of our community.
All right. Anyone else want to jump in?
I guess it depends on what the question is, right? So,
well, you don't have to jump in. There will be lots of questions, I guarantee it. So
I'd like to jump in.
okay.
So it's kind of weird what happens here in Davis. The minute someone starts talking about economic development or economic activity, we instantaneously morph into real estate development. It's this odd notion. There's all kinds of economic development activity that has nothing to do with real estate development. But you can never say economic development in the public here without it immediately transitioning into real estate development. So we have an economic development officer here today, and I'm pretty sure a big chunk of her time is not spent on real estate. Rather, it has to do with promoting and developing economic opportunity in the community. Economic development and real estate development are two entirely different things.
One last comment, and I'll stand by you too.
Yes.
Okay. Is it I think if you're an academic and studying those things, you can separate them. I think they're integrated because you don't have community, you don't have the economics to support people being in a place, working together. So economic development is jobs, it's housing, it's a whole range of things, businesses and so forth. And all those things together make a community. So I wouldn't separate them necessarily.
All right. Yeah.
Process and equality under the rules and regulations are very important to me. And as Brett pointed out earlier.
I'm gonna repeat it.
Okay. Oh, well, that'll work. Okay, so process and equality under the rules and regulations of the community are really important to me. So what I'm wondering, and anybody can join in, is under the new process, how do we see equalizing that so that perhaps we don't just have this count to 3 and I get an exemption as a working class community?
I think that's so you can't avoid the count to 3, right? But here's the thing. When, as a council person, and I would say this is true of my colleagues as well, when you feel that the process has been well thought out and comes up with a well thought out solution, it's pretty difficult to go against the current, right? If your inclination is to go against the current. And so I think we're bringing in subject matter experts. They're going to work with the community members that represent a variety of perspectives. And I believe we'll come up with a pretty robust plan that will be comfortable with. But ultimately, just kind of the form of Davis municipal government, it really is kind of 3. And just being honest with you, right? Having been on the losing side of not having 3 a couple of times, it just kind of is what it is. But the thing about it is, so that is not to take away from the importance of community involvement in this process, because it is going to be an open process. There'll be opportunities for questioning what some of the assumptions are. There'll be an opportunity to raise concerns, and that process, I think, will be fair and open and honest. And so I would not worry that, at the end of the line, it's just really up to the whims of whoever's in the city council at that point. No, I would really work on that best product, and I would have confidence that the city council will actually approve what is being proposed. There might be some minor differences, but I would be very surprised if we didn't take the community and consultants' recommendations.
Anyone else want to jump in?
So I see a lot of confusion in the public around this topic. It all starts with the vision. What is the vision, and what are the set of goals that incorporate that vision? That's paramount. So when you look at the hierarchy, it's what is it that we're trying to achieve? The plan, a general plan, a core area specific plan, or any other specific plan, is a plan to achieve those goals. The plan is not paramount. The goals are paramount. There's no point in following a plan that's been developed that leads you away from the goals. So if there's aspects of the plan that lead you away from what it is that you're trying to achieve, the plan has to be amended. Those are called general plan amendments, core area specific plan amendments, zoning amendments. It happens all the time. You create the best possible plan at that point in time to achieve the goal that you set out to achieve, and then at some point you realize, you know what, we didn't really think that through properly. We need to make a little adjustment here and a little adjustment there. Also, the community may at some time decide to change their vision or change their goals, and so then further amendments are required. But what I see happening all the time is you'll have particular community members that decide that their personal goal supersedes the goal of the community. And then they'll pick out some portion of some plan or some zoning ordinance that supports their particular goal, even though it's not in alignment with the community. I think the community needs to step up and say, hey, this is our vision, this is our goal, city council, make it happen. And as far as the core area specific plan goes, those goals have not been achieved. The general plan, as far as the downtown goes, as well as the core area specific plan, call for significant densification. That happened in 1961 when the community came up with the plan. That happened again in 1992, and that happened again in 2007 when there was an update. Significant, you could also say massive densification. None of that has happened. We have come nowhere close to meeting the community's goal. That's not my goal. I didn't live here in 2007. I didn't live here in 1992. And I did not live here in 1961. This is the community's vision. Massive densification in the downtown. Why? Because it didn't want to sprawl. It said, we don't want to sprawl. We don't want it, so we will densify. But we haven't done that. And so that is the crux of the problem, is we keep clinging to plans that don't lead to densification. And then when you point out, hey, we're not densifying because of X, Y, and Z, then there's immediate pushback. Well, that's because some community members don't want densification. So if the community doesn't want densification, but it does want densification, something needs to happen. The community needs to make up its mind about what it wants, and then we'll craft a plan to achieve that. So these plans are not my plans. These are the community plans, and we're not fulfilling the goals that are embedded in those plans. And that's where I'm hopeful that this update will lead to some kind of clarification around that notion.
All right. Next question.
Thanks, David. My name's Robert Canning. I live in Northeast. But my question has to do more with the process. I'll make 2 points. One is a process question. Just a response to Michael. Densification in 1961 is really different than densification in 2017. I think that the goals have to shift with the context. That's my comment. The question is, we've got a consultant, we've got staff, we have the city council, we have the neighborhood associations and the population at large, we have all these constituencies. My concern is, how does having a consultant help us beyond what we already have? Maybe you could explain that, Brett, or other folks who are involved in this process. Why we have to have a consultant?
So maybe Bob Wolcott would like to actually address this, but I think the simple answer is because of their knowledge of best practices, what has worked in other communities, right? And so why try to, build from scratch an approach when experts have studied this? I mean, there is maybe science is too strong of a word, but there is a practice. And so these people are experts in their field and they have a track record. And part of the reason they were selected was because of the portfolio, the different communities they worked with. There were, I want to say, 8 project teams that applied. It was narrowed down to the top 3, and the top 3 all came in and made their Davis-specific proposals, and got the planning staff. And so there is an expertise. It's not something that if we just sort of got together, all of us here who care about the downtown and came up with our plans, we would make some very important errors. And the problem is that sometimes those errors are hard to recover from. And in terms of what I talked about before, sort of the vision for the future, there's something to be said about experience. And so these firms have a lot of experience working with the communities over the decades, right? And so they've watched, and so they are really in tune with sort of the changing economic environment, also social environment. So just to throw something out there, and I'll be quiet here. What does the self-driving car mean for the traditional view of the downtown? I mean, I've given that, a few minutes of thought. Where is there on these teams are people who have really talked, thought by themselves, reached out to colleagues, attended sort of different events, and there is sort of a new area of inquiry on this, and it's quite substantial. So we hear, I get all the time, we need big parking lots. Well, part of me thinks like, okay, we build this big, huge parking lot, and 10 years later, everyone's just sort of, pressing their smartphone, and the car picks them up and they get dropped off somewhere else, and nobody drives downtown anymore. Right? I'm not saying that's what happens, but that's just an example of where expertise is important for different areas that we may not even sort of think of and have the ability to use.
Go ahead.
So, how many have dogs? Have dog owners in the room? How many of you have trained your dogs? How many have talked to more than one dog trainer who give you conflicting information? I can help. Right? The only thing that two dog trainers can agree on is what the third dog trainer is wrong about. And I think Brett makes a good point, is that you bring in outside expertise because they have kind of a broader experience, they've seen things in different places. But the bottom line is, when you talk to different dog trainers, they give you different ideas. You know your dog, you know your relationship with your dog, and you need to pick and choose those things that help you get the right outcome with how that relationship with you and your dog should turn out. And I think that the importance of having some expertise from the outside to assist a community group is to have that balance between the community who knows who we are, what we want, and how we live in our city, and then have ideas being brought to the table as ways that we can improve the city. I will beg to differ with Mr. Bush about we've not done anything in terms of densification in our downtown core. We've not done enough, I would agree. We also have some great examples. Just down the street, we have a lot. We have, in addition, the infill of Mishkas between the varsity and, not Boyer. Oh, I should know that one. There are Crapeville. There are a whole bunch of places where there have been additional larger stature buildings that have been built, and I would agree it's not enough. So how do we get past that hump? And how do we plan in such a way that we get past that hump? That's my question.
So the consulting thing, that's a really simple answer. There's two things that the consulting team will do, and there's one thing the consulting team won't do. And I know this because I've recently observed this process in another town in the valley that's very similar to Davis. The one thing that this consulting team won't do is tell the community what its vision is. The community will determine what the vision is. The consulting team will help the community find consensus around that, and it will use particular techniques to make that happen, but the community will determine what the vision is and what the goals are. The second thing that the consulting team will do is it will help the community develop plans and strategies to achieve that vision and achieve those goals. It has a great deal of expertise in that, and it is not rocket science. This is all well-known human behavior type things, urban planning principles, and it will help, it will inform the community on what plans it needs to adopt to achieve the community's vision, and it can cost out what it will take to make that happen. So that's what the consulting team brings to the whole process. As far as Michael Bish saying that we haven't achieved our densification plans, Okay, so we aimed for first place in a league of 16 teams, and we didn't land in 16th place, we landed in 14th place. So there are a few examples of densification around the downtown, but those are not the rule, they're the exception. And there's given reasons why that's the case.
Just a very brief comment on this. As I said at the beginning of my comments, I'd much rather talk about employment opportunities for our younger people in this town and opportunities for new employers to come to this town. If we look at the 10-city study that the Planning Commission had commissioned and was contained in the State of the Mayor's 2017 report on the state of the city, and we compare ourselves on that scale of metrics, then many of them were done by Bay Area economics. To date, here, almost September, I've heard no discussion, I've seen nothing in the newspaper about any commissions talking about the results of that finding or its implications for our future economically, what our housing demand needs are for our students, what our need is for additional employment opportunities. And so, well, I think this consultant that we're hiring is at the top of their game for urban planning. We go back to the question of the vision for the community, what we need, how we're going to address the continued growth in students, and how all of that is going to fold into their plan. So I'm waiting for that conversation.
All right.
Hi, my name is Dennis New. I've been a long-time resident of Davis. And all the visions and plans and God knows what. I'm still a citizen out of South Davis, and I want to come into town, and I don't care what you have the grandest entertainment center. I can't find a parking place, and I have to turn around and leave, and that's unfortunate. First of all, I want to say for Davis Lumber, this shop downtown, I've been a member of buying from Davis Lumber for 40 years, and you're the only one that's forever trying to improve your facility, and there's generally a parking place. So thank God there's people like you around.
Thank you for your business.
My concern is this, mainly coming into Davis is a problem. It seems like it's getting worse. I don't know what the change is. Ollie Drive is developing further and further. There definitely has to be in the future a tunnel, additional tunnel. There's never no money for this kind of thing. The other factor is that the enrollment of the university is forever increasing because they have the land. And when you bring 7,000 or 8,000 new students in, that is going to affect the infrastructure of this town, I'm sorry to say. I mean, it's wonderful for business, wonderful, but there's not enough housing to begin with, not enough rental space.
Can we get to a question?
Yeah. All right. So my point is this: with all the plans that are being established, what the future can you move towards these factors? So there's improvement, so that you can come downtown, you feel comfortable, and I know parking is a major concern, but also the entrance of this city. All right. Thank you. Sorry.
Parking. So, so let's just talk about parking real quick, and then we'll talk about the other things briefly. We need a good clock here, because David's right. We're used to start talking randomly.
You got 15 minutes.
So, as far as parking goes, people make a fundamental mistake, I think, when they hear about paid parking. They focus on the negative aspect. There really, I believe at this point there is a parking management issue. So right now, we all kind of have experience having a tough time to park. If we go to the 4th and G garage right now, I'll be willing to actually make this bet with you. I'll give you $5 for every car that's parked there, and you give me $5 for every open space, open parking space.
Don't take the bet.
Right? And so that tells me, I personally believe there's a bunch of open spaces there. So that's really a management plan. And so the purpose of paid parking, Davis is fortunate. We're not same thing to get Sacramento, but I won't. The purpose of paid parking is to dissuade people from parking downtown in some prime spots, giving them an incentive to go somewhere else. So if you're here for 8 hours, maybe it's okay that you walk 3 blocks. But if you want that convenience of just sort of pulling up and hopping in and grabbing something and going away, maybe you are willing to spend 50 cents or $1. The idea with paid parking is how do we encourage people to park in other locations if they're willing to? And this is important because the goal here is not revenue. So one of the things we talked about is having an affinity card. So I go and I shop at Sophia's, and this can be true for all the Davis Downtown Business Association. People who accept sort of the Davis Downtown tallies this, and so I get 10% of that towards my parking. Or as an affinity card holder, if I spend over $50 a month downtown, I get to park for free. Or if, there's all sorts of variations. So a lot of us remember going to Sacramento and the Macy's there with the parking lot, and you'd get your parking thing validated, and you thought you might go buy something at Macy's, but you didn't, so then you go and buy a muffin, and then that way you're parking the street for the first hour, and half price thereafter. There are all sorts of possibilities there. I can tell you that the City Council is moving forward with this cautiously. We're going to do a pilot program. Our goal is not to destroy the downtown, but ultimately, Mike Mill talks about sort of goals. Our goal is to make it so that it is easy and convenient for you to patronize the shops and restaurants here, so that places like Alphabet Moon will stay in business because there's lots of people who want to come down and like that personal attention, like unique product selection, things like that. But the reason for paid parking is to incentivize people to park a little further away for free if they want to, thus freeing up spots so that people like us kind of running a little late to the Vangaurd front can just pull in and walk. As far as the other thing, I'll be a little greedy here. When we talk about economic development, we switch our point of reference a lot. When we talk about jobs, when we talk about housing. When I look at this, so when we talk about the university's growing enrollment, all the students, all that traffic. Well, we don't talk about the fact that for every 1,000 new students, there's going to be a couple hundred new jobs, right? So we frame the discussion, we use our lens in such a way that, we forgot about that part. But then we sort of do a little twist and we say, we need to build over east of Mace, the Innovation Center, because we need jobs. Well, companies locating there, they're not committing to, housing a certain number of people or making sure that they all obey us or anything like that, right? So I'm not saying that the university doesn't need to do more, but it's not this all negative thing because of enrollment growth. We forget sometimes about the additional jobs that they create. And then one last thing, and we'll be quiet here. It's funny that we're very protective of our open space when it's sort of on the perimeter of the city of Davis. Yet when we talk about the university developing housing, they have thousands of acres. Well, that's ag land, that's ag research land, right? So I'm not saying that they shouldn't develop some of that, but it's funny, so each little square inch on the perimeter of Davis is precious. We can't take that ag land away. But the same people are so easy to tell the university, you have thousands of acres, just go ahead and build. Obviously it's a little more complex than that, but I do find it interesting. And so the university's growth, while having some challenges, it's not all a negative. Thanks.
So, quick introduction. I'm Larry Gunther, a member of Old East Davis Neighborhood Association Board, standing in for Rhonda. So a couple of issues is that we can have a lot of goals, and we have a lot of goals, as Mr. Bish said, and we can have plans, and we can have desires, but we do not have all the control. We can we can hope that people stop using their cars, but until people who stop using their cars come here, we can't change that. If all our businesses attract people from out of town and our regional transit is terrible, they're going to drive here by car. And so their cars need somewhere to go. Until that changes, or we can help, we can push things in a certain direction, perhaps with paid parking or something. Another way it affects it is we can have the goal of increasing density downtown. I don't know if the plan was to have massive increases, but significant. Okay, we can have significant. We don't have total control over that. If a building is never sold, it cannot be redeveloped. Well, it could, but they're not. That's one of the big issues with downtown. We could have had a lot more buildings that were more than one story, but those buildings have not been sold, and they have not been redeveloped. So, yes, we had goals, and we haven't achieved them. Is that the fault of the plan? Maybe, partly, but there are a lot of causes. There are a lot of causes, and we don't have control over all of those causes.
All right. I don't know who came up first.
Well said. Oh, thanks.
You want to go? Okay. Sure.
And we also never talked about.
I would like to know if the vision for the core plan has high sustainability goals, and if you're working with the idea of environment, economics, and equity, which is known in these days as being the real winning combination. Also, is the core plan looking at a traffic intervention? What is happening on the tunnel from Richards is a very old and broken system. It does not work right for what we have today. So to make it work for the parking and everything else, that has to be fixed.
I've talked a lot. I think I've used it right.
So that's an easy one to take on. These specific plans that were developed first in 1961, then 1992, if you read those from cover to cover, it's remarkable. Those people that developed those plans and provided input, they were far-sighted. They were thinking about things. They were thinking about land conservation, water conservation. There's all kinds of stuff about air quality in every single one of them. The whole notion of redeveloping already developed land and making better use of it and making it more productive, that's by definition sustainable. Sprawl is not sustainable. Why anyone would be promoting sprawl on the outskirts of the city or on the outskirts of campus when there's opportunities for redevelopment within the city, I can't wrap my brain around it. Just like well, Brett didn't say it quite that way, but I'll say it that way. I can't wrap my brain around it. Saying sprawl on the outskirts of the city is bad, but sprawl on the outskirts of the campus is good. That makes no sense to me. The problem is, I remember something Jim said once in a public forum. The only thing that Davisites hate more than sprawl is redevelopment. Thank you. Densification. That was his line. The only thing that we hate more than sprawl is densification. And what was the second part of your question? That was an interesting one too. Oh, you said something about the entrance, right? Okay, so there is a plan to improve the entrance to downtown. It was funded through somebody that was redeveloping their property. It was called the Target Paths. That developer put up a bunch of money. Cunningham Engineering put up a bunch of time. And some other entities also put up some money. And they created something called the Arch Project. It's only called the Arch Project because there's an arch component to it, but it's a wide-ranging plan to improve pedestrian, bicycle, and automobile throughput through the tunnel, as well as dramatically increasing the aesthetic appeal of that entrance, because as far as I'm concerned, it's dog ugly.
All right. Did we address the sustainability enough for your purposes, or you want more?
Well, I agree that the general plan is really progressive. I wonder if the consultants are working on that level. It seemed like they only mentioned community have a sustainability and resiliency.
So their scope of work goes into quite a bit of detail about sustainability, and that's Bob. Is that document online, or where is there scope of work available to anybody here that wants to see it?
This scope of work report.
That's right, for the consultant.
July 19th, I think it was city council meeting where was selected.
So there's quite a bit of detail there, and if you provide your email address, I'm sure we can get you that scope of work, and then you can see what it is that they're supposed to do for us.
All right, let me,
I'm not here to say anything, but on the sustainability, I think it runs through everything. As the speaker said, land use, transportation, infrastructure, housing, the public realm, the streets, the sidewalks, the bike, the extent we do parking. Every aspect of the plan has a sustainability aspect. But I just wanted to offer as one person, but maybe others will agree with us, that in the end, after this thing is all done, what will make it a good plan? And I would say about 4 things. That it would have a strong vision that maximizes benefits and minimizes problems.
make sure you're talking.
Second, as mentioned, it's a balance of all of our goals, economic, environmental, and social. In the end, third, it's not I hope it's not a 3-2 vote of council where 51% of the public likes this come out of the box plan and 49% hate it. I hope that it's a much higher percentage because it's based on a long process where elements have been incorporated all through the 2-year process that make it something more than 51% and 3 council members can support and then 49% hate it. Then it won't survive because then those 49% will just keep coming out every year afterwards and with all the problems. So it's got to be something that has widespread support. And as stated, it's clear, predictable, because our current documents are a mess. But it has some flexibility to deal with changes through time. They're always going to occur, but it's not so uncertain and changeable that you don't know what you have. It's implementable.
Thank you. And that's Bob Wolcott from the city. Jim, thank you for being patient.
Thank you. I'm Jim Gray, and I want to offer just a little bit about challenging us to look forward. It's one thing to have hindsight of where we've been as a community, and it's another thing to have insight of where we are today, or to think we are today. It's something else to have foresight and try to predict where we're going. And I think as we think about the general plan and the core area specific plan, we have to be talking about where do we want to take ourselves as a community and what are the values that we want to preserve. With that said, I am troubled that the discussion about the core area doesn't lead to some really important things. What the hell are we going to do to make the Amtrak depot the core of our core area downtown? We are one of the very few cities in the valley along the I-80 corridor that has that asset, and we ought to be pushing and leading to how we can connect to it. Secondly, we had a policy developed a number of years ago that chased the office workers out of the downtown and put them in retail in its place. And if you look around at what's happening in retail, we are going to be losing a battle as society about retail being necessarily bricks and mortar. We have to think about how can we attract and retain the knowledge workers, the scientists, the university to our core area. We don't have the quality and number and square footage and size and scale of workplaces in our downtown. And if we don't change the debate, we're never going to get those because we're still fighting old battles about sales tax and the value of the retail. And retail's the challenge. Thirdly, I just want to say about parking. We have to move to a place where we monetize parking, where we recognize its economic value. If tonight we were collecting $3 from that car, $3 from that car, $3 from that car, and all of these cars down here, it's not the $3 that'll make the difference. It'll be the tens of thousands of dollars a night that we could pay in bond debt, in infrastructure payment, to enhance our downtown, to address connections from South Davis, to build better amenities, and then the property values themselves will rise, because if Dobie realizes that he can make more money selling parking than the city can, he'll build additional private sector parking. I think that our core area challenge is one of, we have to say, okay, where are we headed? Where do we want to go? And remember our legacy, but think about our children and our grandchildren.
Anyone want to add on to that? Respond?
So I wanted to slip this in here before David cuts the mic this evening. I have all kinds of wishes, just like Jim, for our core area specific plan and for all of you. But paramount among those wishes is along the notion of what our downtown is. It's the social gathering place of our community. It's also the art and entertainment district for our community. It's the central business district. The downtown is, other than, say, sports, the schools, and the churches, it's the epicenter of our community. But think about that. Look who's here this evening. When I say it's the epicenter of our community, it's actually only at certain segments of our community. There are segments of our community that don't enjoy this terrific amenity. They don't take advantage of it. They don't know how to take advantage of it. It's part of the systemic societal barriers, issues, what have you, that don't make a number of amenities available to these segments of our community. And I would hope that in the development of whatever this new plan looks like, this new vision, these new goals, that these voices that we don't hear from very much, that they have a voice at the table, and that their voices are reflected in that plan, so that it is a social gathering place, an art and entertainment district, central business district for everybody, and not just certain segments of our community.
All right, well, I am going to wrap it up with that. Make sure as you're going out the door that you grab a flyer for next month's event. Again, it is September 27th here, and if you think this is a lively discussion, well, next month's discussion is going to be even more lively. The students will be back, and we're going to be discussing student housing, which is one of the hottest issues around for the last couple of years. So I want to thank everybody, and once again, thank you to Sophia's for hosting this, and thank everybody for coming out.